I hope you have your mask on right now.
Dude, yeah, I should do that. That would be awesome. I can patch this from Dealer Refresh. I just learned from CDC.
I've got mine right here.
I'm going to turn this off.
It's so funny though. It depends on where you live. We're
Yeah.
not. I'm here in this town. Everyone goes by the rules. Everyone does what they need to do. But of course, I'm not too far from the border of West Virginia, and just more royal, and just things are just more relaxed. That's all.
Have you
And
ever
the
seen the
trees are much
movie
more straight.
The Wild
Yeah.
Whites of West Virginia?
Hey, I love West Virginia, man.
But have you seen that documentary? The
What? Wrong
guy
turn?
Jackass made it. It's unbelievable.
You didn't hear what I said.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't hear it.
The movie Wrong Turn, is that the documentary you're referring to?
No, it's called. It should be The
Did you
Wild
did you
Whites
ever
of
watch
West Virginia. I'm still traumatized.
did you ever watch the movie Wrong Turn?
I have not.
Okay,
I
you
don't
need to
know
go back
that
and
one.
watch that. Oh, that's a classic. And they made like 5 or 6 of them after that. They all got lame. They just did a reboot, I think, last year. But you gotta go back and watch the original Wrong Turn with Elijah Dushku, um, which you don't hear much out of her
God,
anymore.
I'd
But
watch it just for
that
hearing that name again.
Elijah Dushku. But that's got to be a weekend thing. Turn the lights out and fire that movie up. That's it's these weird inbreds from West Virginia, and this couple makes a wrong turn down a back road, and it gets pretty crazy from there.
Nice. If it's as good as Tiger King, I'm all in. I'm unashamed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when
Tiger
I say
King would have been better if it was in West Virginia.
it would have been. Everything's better in West Virginia.
That's for sure. Although that is definitely one of the prettiest parts of the country.
It really is. It really is.
The Greenbrier area especially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, I guess we're officially here now.
Here we are live.
All right. Well, this show's
Did you?
about West Virginia.
Yeah. Did you? Did any of you guys ever watch the Hannibal series?
Well, I remember the first movie, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, not the movie. I think it
Okay.
was Fox. There's an actual series with that the guy Mad. What's his name's Mads Maddock. I think that's his name, and he plays Hannibal Lecter. I think it went 3 or 4 seasons. I've got them all on DVD, so it's a little older. But dude, it's the first season. Fishburne's in it as well. Lawrence Fishburne.
Yep.
He plays one of the detectives. But man, that was freaking great TV. Great.
If you would have
TV.
told me that you had it on VHS, I would have really been impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd have been. I'd have to send you the player to go along with the movie or this series. Well, the reason why I brought that up was because we were talking about West Virginia, and a big portion of that show, at least in the first season, takes place, I think, in the Greenbrier, West Virginia area, and then also back and forth between there and the Northern Virginia, D.C. area because of some of the psych wards.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I don't know. I always make sure to have a full tank of gas when I'm driving through some place like that. Been a little traumatized since I saw that Deliverance movie back in the day.
Well, you'll be more traumatized if you watch Wrong Turn, because I swear the same thing happens. They run out of gas. Scary shit. Well, Kevin, it's always a pleasure, man. Really appreciate you joining us. I know we tried putting this together a few weeks earlier, wasn't able to make it happen, so I'm glad we were able to this time around.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here today. I'll tell you, Digital Dealer, when we went out to Tampa in the spring, I was really unsure how it was going to work out. It was the first event since COVID. I was pleasantly surprised. There was actually a lot more dealers there than I expected. If anything, they relied on exhibitors. But
wow.
It ended up being a pretty good show.
That's what I heard too. And as we were an exhibitor there, and it was, I heard from my sales team that it was one of the highest quality traffic events they've ever experienced. So.
I guess
it was definitely a smaller exhibit hall, but I think the folks that were there had turned some pretty good business. I know we contracted at least a couple items that were out there. But, it's just one of those things, automotive, it's best in person. There's so many great people, and I think people are just eager to get out, reconnect, and kind of get life back to normal. So I'm going to Digital Dealer in the fall and praying that we don't have another pandemic cancellation or something like that.
I guess we better cross our fingers at this point, huh?
Shoot, I've already paid half the way there, so I'm definitely in.
I booked.
Kevin, have you missed any of the? Because I mean, you basically speak at all of them, or at least I think you missed one, maybe a couple years ago, and that was it. You've spoken at just about every one.
I have. I think I've been every Digital Dealer since number 4. Was it 3 or 4 when I met you too? Because you were sitting behind me, and that was down in Nashville. And just for the folks listening in, we're in a small room. Digital Dealer was not that big. And I hear these two carrying on behind me that I've been interacting with on these forums for a few years. And I turn around, I'm like, "Are you Alex and Jeff?" That's kind of the first time we met in person, but we already had that online relationship for some years.
Yeah, I remember that. That was great.
We probably weren't being disruptive at all.
Not at all. That's probably why I knew it was us.
Yeah, there you go.
Trouble.
Well, with this, with the last Digital Dealer, what type of walkaways or did you walk away learning anything? Did you see anything new? And even if it's not a conference or such, anything new out there you sort of keeping your eye on?
Well, one thing that caught my attention is if anybody listening in has done some of these Facebook events. To me, it's a modern day super sale being run through social media. I saw Dealer Funnel was taking a unique angle. Most of those events will work the prospects you develop via Facebook Messenger for 1 to 2 weeks. And then from there, it's essentially nothing else unless you want to take the database and run with it. Dealer Funnel, though, I was working with Kenny Calhoun, had a solution where they're basically pulling all that contact out into another platform. And rather than just Facebook Messenger, they're also texting, emailing these people and following them out as far as 100 days, which to me obviously is much better bang for the buck. So that's one of the things we're actually in the midst of testing right now because we've had a lot of success with the Facebook events. I think these will be even more efficient. But I can share that's one of the exciting things that we walked out with that we're testing right now.
So you've already done a few Facebook events. I've seen I forget who does one, but we actually have a dealership pretty local that has done quite a few of them. I don't know how. I guess at some point I must have liked their page just to keep an eye on it. And though I forget what company they go through, but I swear they've got to have a team in the background that goes into the comments. And because I'm looking at some of the people that are commenting, I'm looking at some of the questions, and I'm like, all right, no actual consumer asked that question, So they've got to have a team in the background that's sort of, getting the comment sections going, asking questions, and then they won't answer any questions within the comments field. They sort of have a template they'll change it up a little bit, but it's always like, we're sending you all the details via direct message is usually what the response is.
Yes. It's almost the just get them in, but you're taking them to the virtual dealership front in the background to message them back and forth. And it's similar to a super sale. You're going to get some of your lower credit people are trying to get approved, things to that nature that are responding to it. But I think if you work them right, they move pretty well. So we've had some success.
Really? That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I think what's some of the theme around the ones you've done? I know the one that I've seen, it's a lot of times it's around, some type of buyback piece.
Yeah. They'll give you different choices. I haven't seen any one that doesn't work. But right now, the buyback, of course, we all want to get a hold of cars. So that's been the most popular one we've been running in the last year. But I'll tell you, when you were asking me about Digital Dealer, the other great session I saw, I believe it was Brian Kramer with Jermaine in Naples, was about Carvana. And the truth is, every Carvana presentation I've been to at any conference for the last few years is ridiculing Carvana. Oh, they spend so much money at the auction acquiring cars, and that they spend $1 gazillion marketing per car. They're losing money. And it's just kind of like a joke fest. And this was the first serious presentation I saw in depth about Carvana as a legitimate contender, not only today, but in the future. And that is the correct message. And in fact, when we talk about acquiring cars, if you haven't figured it out, they're not focusing on the auction anymore, folks. They're going after our people that we typically get on trade-ins to get those cars. So definitely brush up your stuff on Carvana and Vroom and Tesla if you haven't already.
Hey, look, do you mind if I piggyback that one for a second, Kevin? Because that's what I see too, especially in the Facebook groups. I don't see this on Dealer Refresh so much, but the various dealership groups on Facebook, they do ridicule Carvana and Vroom for what they spend at the auction. And they fail to recognize what the business model actually is. It's the same business model as Amazon. It's not a matter of going out and being profitable. It's a matter of getting as much volume, if that's a word you want to think of it as possible. Just get your name out there, get your brand known, get people experiencing it, and that's all that matters. And then you take in investor money, so you keep rolling on that front, and that's where your capital is coming from, and it really doesn't matter how much they buy a car for. It just doesn't.
I love the analogy because if you look at the history of Amazon, specifically their stock price and capitalization, it's the same exact pattern we're seeing today.
Yep. It gets even crazier, though. I'll throw one more thing out there because this happened here. So I'm in Vermont, and Dealership Alley is Shelburne Road, and it's a few miles from where I'm sitting right now. I sit in a city that's where all the box stores are. In Burlington, Vermont, they won't allow any box stores. So they're all over here. So Walmart, Best Buy, everything's over here. Well, I came into work one day, and there's a Starbucks, and I was walking through the Starbucks parking lot, and I saw these Vroom cars parked right there. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Started to do some inquiring, and Vroom is not in Vermont. Right? They're advertising here, but they're not in Vermont. But what they had done is they had rented space and used a physical address here to run some SEO, do some paid search, run some local ads, legitimately from playing within those rules, and then they'll ship a car out here to somebody who'll buy it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so everybody's competing with them now.
Yeah,
whether it or not.
We talked about this probably a couple months ago. I brought it up on one of the shows, Alex, because I ran across that here in this town. They were renting out space, or at least an address, at the local outlets right down the street from here. Because I was in Marketplace, because that's where I took notice to it. I was in Marketplace. I'm like, damn, where are all these cars from Vroom coming from? And I mean, my cars were just straight up buried. You couldn't find anything. Every freaking car was Vroom. So, I mean, they must have been pumping their full inventory from every location through there. And I'm like, they're nowhere near here. And then, I did the search, and there's the address right there for the shopping outlets right up the street. And I was like, get out of here. So I personally don't have any real hard issues with Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace, making those changes.
Well, I think the simplest lesson learned is if you want to lead, you got to be humble. You're never going to know anything. This automotive is an endless game of chess that you never win. And I get a little frustrated when I see some of my peers that are looking at this and are laughing. I'm like, hey guys, it's nothing to laugh about. We need to be watching close because they're doing some things pretty well that we can learn from. And I believe we're all going to step up. We're doing a good job.
That's the best
Yeah,
part.
I think
dealers have the ability to combat these guys. It's just a matter of playing the game the way the customer wants it to be played. Like I have a theory that one of the biggest problems is what we as an industry send out to the customer is inconsistent. So, the customer sees an ad that comes from the manufacturer up high, and it's like, $399 lease special. And then that might entice them. They might say, okay, well, I didn't know I could get that car for $399. Well, let me go click around somewhere on the internet. And then I come across a dealer ad, probably in paid search or something along those lines. And it's advertising a price or a payment or something along those lines. And I click it, and I end up at the website that shows me maybe the same vehicle I clicked on, maybe a grouping of those vehicles, but nothing about the ad. So now I've got disjointed experience, right? I'm not seeing the manufacturer thing. I'm not seeing what I just clicked on to come over. And I take it a step further, and maybe I've got a payment in mind or something along those lines. So I see that there's a payment calculator. I go over to that part. And the payment calculator, as we all know on the dealer websites, is programmed at like a 9% interest rate. So there's no leasing. There's nothing like that. So you go in there, you plug a number in there, you end up with a payment that's huge. It's a turnoff. So then maybe you stick with it and you go into the inventory, and maybe you see this button that says get your payment or get your price, get your e-price or whatever it is. And maybe you go into that. Right? You fall into that tunnel. It might be a DR solution. It might just be a form submission. It might be something clever that Kevin's doing. We'll come back to that in a minute. But the experience changes again. So at some point you end up with an internet department who usually isn't quoting a payment. They're usually giving a price because that's the easiest thing to do. Getting a payment out of the sales desk is impossible. And now you're sending the customer on a price thing, and the customer is saying, well, I wanted a payment or I wanted a number for my trade or whatever the hell it was. And you're creating frustration. And then they come into the store, and where do we start them? Sticker and rough black. So, it's like we're doing all these things to create this very disjointed and frustrating experience for the consumer. It's not that we think we're doing anything wrong. We're being very transparent. Eventually, we'll show them the invoice or we'll give them a good price and that kind of thing. But what we're missing is that we're using disjointed technologies and we're using different messaging in different places that's not saying the same thing. And the customer is the one who's eating all of this, and they're not liking what they're tasting. Whereas Vroom and Carvana, it's all the same message the whole way through. So it feels really good when you're eating that one. And it's really that simple. You just get that part right.
Well, it's that simple, but we've probably been having this exact same conversation for 12 years now. So I'm not sure how simple it is. Do you deal with that? Do you deal with that, Kevin?
Well, you know what? I think some of that problem is sorting itself out, and it's within digital retailing. And I'm sure you're very familiar with that, Alex. Obviously, when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, I mean, the number one thing they're doing is penciling deals. I mean, we're getting tens and thousands of pencil deals each month, and they're essentially working on that payment, getting an idea of how that deal can frame together. And for us, that is a win because that is the battle of engagement. I mean, often tell dealers, your battleground is your dealership website. It is there based upon their experience, whether or not you're going to win that decision, that they're going to choose you to buy from. And I often say automotive retailing online is very simple. It's the same three questions all the way back since the 70s when my dad sold cars. How much per month? How much for my trade? Can you get me approved? Is it any coincidence those same three questions are getting answered within digital retailing tools? And so I think that payment side, we're seeing such interaction with it because we give transparency and access to it, is actually helping that get a lot better.
I would agree with that one.
Makes sense.
So Kevin, we mentioned, something that you're doing a little different on your website. So that'd be forms and the lack thereof. You mind expanding on that a little bit?
Not at all. And each one of us have been doing this a long time. And the point I was pushing, I was laughing about how this got promoted today. Automotive websites blow. The reality is I do think they're antiquated. In fact, I opened up with a picture at Digital Dealer of the computer from the $35 million plane I flew in Desert Storm. And over 90% of the combat hours I flew, that computer never worked. It was that antiquated. And not only that, that same computer today would probably fit into an Apple Watch. And I used that as an analogy. I said, you know what, our automotive websites have really not advanced that far and are really not that good when we look at the market that's out there around us. So let me say this in fairness. On the mobile side, we have gotten better. And I look at most mobile automotive websites. We can get our consumers to what they're looking for to buy or to service, whatever the case, pretty quickly. That's great. But the thing is, it's absolutely ridiculous that we're still focused on automotive websites. They're all about generating form submissions. I'm still seeing sessions at these conferences about the standard KPIs, which I'll review in a second. And I don't believe we're measuring the right things or providing the best experience. So let's think about this. If you can get 2.5 to 3 people out of 100 to fill out a website form, you're considered awesome. And if I can get another 8 to 12 people to make a phone call, that is awesome. Add those two top numbers, 3 and 12, 15. That means if I can get 15 people out of every 100 shoppers to convert, I can strut around like a peacock at one of these automotive shows, and everybody says, look at Kevin, he's a rock star. And my
That's what you do.
Yeah, it is. You got me figured out. And that's the end. I am. I'm like, why are we accepting this? This is awful. I mean, that means 85% of the people we're engaging with never even convert. And even worse, those numbers I gave you that we've been quoting for 15 years, form conversion now is really around 1.5 out of 100. So when you look at it, we were one of the early people to put events on this. I know Brian Pash was a leader on this. When you set an event on a form submission, the abandonment rates are ridiculous. They're 70% plus because you click on the button, get e-price as a top one, and all we do is we deliver a form. So then, all right, let's look at our modern day consumer. What do they value? Convenience, time, right, and privacy. And I'm going to violate those two things in 10 seconds when all they do is they put get e-price. I'm asking for all their information. Hey, maybe in a day, a week, or 90 days, I'll get back to you with that answer. So what we're looking to do, and I know we're not the first, is, why are we still doing forms? Can we do this better? And simply put, we just took those traditional calls to action. It's not difficult with your website provider. And instead of having it point to a form, we pointed it to our live chat provider looking to get real-time answers and to set appointments. So that was the initial setup, and I'm going to give you the results because it didn't really work that well. So, in fairness,
that's good. I've always wanted to do that. I'm glad you tested it out for me.
Well, that's why I'm going to save everybody some time with some of the black eyes and bloody noses we got. The reality is that we have great chat providers, but let's think about it. They're all set up to do one thing, and that's basically to collect information to set an appointment. If they can't answer a question, you're right back to a form submission with the chat transcript, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the first things we did was, what we'll do, and the top CTA, this is pre-COVID, was get e-price. Why don't we deliver the best price now? And so what we do is they get e-price, we initiate the chat, and because we're all dealing with map rules from the OEM, right? So you need a name and or a phone number or an email address to give them below map pricing. So that's exactly what we do is we request that information. And what do you think our abandonment rate was? Right back to 70%. Oh. Same exact thing. Really? I'm like, it's not working. We made one little change that made a night and day difference, and you're going to laugh. But all we did was we changed the verbiage in that chat to say, Honda requires us to get your name and cell phone number to be able to deliver below map pricing. And when we did that, all of a sudden things took off. So we saw an improvement in conversion by changing with verbiage, changing where we put our CTAs to. But the reality is, with having the chat provider handle it strictly, we still didn't see a huge jump in performance. So then the next thing to look at is manning chat yourselves. So now I know I'm stirring up the pot with the people watching because we've done this before too. Usually you're awful. I mean, you got to camp next to the computer. You got about 8 to 12 seconds to respond. And it's worse than phone calls. My favorite has always been chat. Do you still have the used 2014 red Honda Civic? Our salesperson. No. That's it. Chat done.
Click.
Yes. But here's the good news. The technology has gotten a lot better. What you can do, and I'm going to paint out what we put together, and then maybe we can take some questions, and then I'll give you performance results. But with most of the platforms today, you can set it up where AI answers the chat immediately. All right, so you handle that, no camping by the computer. The chat provider can then initiate the chat. If it's a simple question, hey, what time are you open till tonight? How do I schedule service? They can handle that. But if it gets into a specific question or something that indicates that we have a real live shopper that's hot right now, then everybody in the sales team with one of these, right, gets the people that are on that team gets a text alert. We have a live chat. The first person that answers the chat owns the customer, and it's very simple at what we coach them to do. Answer the question, ask for the appointment. When we switched to that is when we saw the big jump in performance. So before I share actual performance numbers, how about I open it up to some questions?
So
I can hear the cynicism.
Well, all right. So Dan Sayer did say, amazing, give context and transparency and the shopper will react well. So yeah, I mean, that's for sure. You give them what they want and they'll reciprocate. It's really simple. And that's one of the things that we don't always do very well. We usually, when it comes to email, especially working with CRM systems and email templates, we're usually responding with a templated thing that isn't built for exactly what that customer was looking for. So, but another thought here, Kevin, like you said earlier, back in your dad's time, people wanted a payment, a trade, and I forgot the third, sorry.
Getting pre-approved.
And pre-approved, yes. But before that, before they even come in, so if you're talking to them from your website, you're talking to them on the phone, they're actually after two things. How much and how soon can I get it? So if you can't answer those two things before they're even there, then you can't really get to the next three. I'm trying to kill time to let your questions come in here, but hopefully,
well, it doesn't have to be
babbling
questions
gets
necessarily
but...
from the folks out there is with you guys. But let me say this. So we did improve conversion by 20%. And there's a lot of people today that'll clap their hands and say, man, that's a home run, very innovative, you did a great job. I'm telling you, I'm still convinced that we can get conversion a lot better by adjusting the verbiage in the chats and making them better. But I'm going to share with you what should blow your mind, which should really shake you up. And that is this. In everything we have done in years past with automotive websites up to today, if you're focused on generating a dealership website form submission, have you gotten deep to track what your appointment setting rate is on dealership website forms? And I'm going to give you a benchmark. If you're really good working those, you're going to have an appointment setting rate of around 25%. Our appointment setting rate, by switching to live chat and handling that real time, jumped to 59%, more than double. And I say this, should this surprise you? Should this surprise me? And the answer is no, because think about this. The modern day consumer, convenience, privacy. When I do this, convenience, I'm giving them a real-time answer on the vehicle they're looking for, and I'm asking them for the appointment right now or in the right frame of mind, not tomorrow, a week, or some 30, 60, 90-day process that I've seen trained on a million times at all these shows. Those days are silly and they're over. And we're starting to tackle the privacy by sharing with them why we need to get that information. And the other thing on this, I'm here to tell you that hands down, this is the number one ROI opportunity that we close within our group. And I have preached this for several years too. People are willing to pay a premium for convenience. But let's dig deep now, because the biggest thing I want to do, Alex and Jeff, today is to challenge everyone that's out there today. It is ridiculous that if you're going out to spend $35,000, $40,000 on a car, that we're giving them a form to fill out. I mean, think about that. Nobody else does this. It's downright silly. We need to get better. I believe this is more consumer facing, and it's proven itself out.
By the way, there I was reading through. We've got some questions now. I'm going to start throwing them up on the screen and sounding them off. But before I throw that up there, you mentioned 59% your appointment rate, right?
Uh-huh.
So what else brings in a 59% appointment rate? Or somewhere there's about. The phone. So what happens on a phone call?
Here's our problem with phone. And I talked a little bit about this at Digital Dealer. We have two things going on with the phone today. Number one, on outbound calls, and just a tidbit, if you're still using outbound call tracking, you better get rid of it yesterday, because it's getting marked spam, potential spam with all the FCC rules. But people are more comfortable texting or chatting today than making calls. I mean, that's the blunt reality. We're starting to see the call counts slowly come down, but then we're seeing our text and chat counts go up. And the counter side is when you make outbound calls, we're finding these people are less likely to take the calls. And, number one, no caller ID. Number two, it's a dealer. Number three, I bet each one of you guys money that you have got a call in the past week with caller ID. It might have been a family member or friend, and you still didn't take the call because it was more convenient to read the transcript and the voicemail later. So while phone is still great, I am seeing, I believe, a steady decline on the phone side, because this is the way people are preferring to communicate.
That, or they're working from home and they don't want to turn off Netflix in the background to have a phone call. But
that's true too. They're watching that Wrong Turn series apparently.
That's right. I've been using Umail for I think over 10, 12 years now. That does you'll go ahead and transcribe the voicemail over to an email or text, and I don't answer the phone. It screens every freaking call for me. And unless I'm expecting the call, good luck if I'm around, or good luck if I'm not busy. to answer the phone.
Yeah. I can personally vouch for that. I've known Jeff for more than 10 years, and he won't even take my calls.
Jeff has been an a-hole for 15 years.
Not on the first time. Yeah. You got to text me first and ask me if I'm going to be free, then call me.
Well, we've got a
but the question is, how many, are consumers doing the exact same thing? I mean, why wouldn't they be? Of course they are. Mm-hmm. One of my questions is, when are you engaging the customer with the chat? Are you still using a call to action button that engages the chat, or are you using some type of pass through where you're engaging with the customer once they hit the page? What's some of the settings or variables that you've got set up around that?
Yes and yes. So we still have the traditional text button on the side or the bottom of the site. And then when you get into the SRPs, VDPs, and clicking those calls to action, they're going to go into chat versus a traditional form. It's important to emphasize that, let's say, for example, I've got a live customer, the chat provider is pushing it out to our team. It doesn't get picked up every time. So if it doesn't get picked up, and that's something we're always working on, it'll go back to the chat provider, and they're going to handle it like a traditional chat where they don't know the answer. And in that case, they're probably going to say, we're going to have to get back to you. And you're back again to the transcript and the traditional form coming into your CRM. So I think this is a good opportunity to share a couple lessons, because this is not an overnight process. All right, this is a big cultural change. And part of the pattern we saw is this. It's like everything else. Your folks are always going to be resistant to change, right? You get 1 to 2 people in the dealership that say, you know what, I'll take these and I'll work them. And what they found in the first couple months was like, this is like taking candy from a baby. They were setting appointments left and right. And by the way, you're getting rid of all the long workflows, which are silly to follow anyhow. They're hitting it right on day one. And then they started selling cars. Great ROI. And then what happens is, a few of the other salespeople are watching, like, gee, what's going on with Billy and Betty? They're going up the sales board here. And maybe it has something to do with that chat thing that they started taking. Then we get more people starting involved with a team. And then literally around month 8, month 9, we were having to set rules, because we had salespeople that would be actively closing a deal in the showroom and would get up and walk away to take the next one coming in to make sure the other folks don't deal with car guys. And that's a good problem to have. Now, I will tell you this. If you do this and you're going through these learning pains, even when our stores were doing a bad job, the appointment setting rate has been around 40%, which is still higher than 25%, in getting more people into the showroom.
Well,
yeah.
Let's before we ask any more questions, let's take some from the audience. So I'm going to shut up too, Jeff. But Ebony Douglas, we're going to do these in the order they came in. So Ebony asks, how are you handling your after hours chats? Are you using AI?
I love that. So that leads into another story. It's basically still 24/7 with the chat provider, the same hybrid. They still will attempt to push those live deals 24 hours a day. And that has worked out well for a couple reasons. We have some people that are just naturally early birds, and they're taking their phone, and at 6 and 7 in the morning, they're setting appointments for that day before they even get to the dealership. And then we've got some night owls doing the same thing. And what's fun is we'll get in, we'll take a store and just like audit transcripts for an hour. The stores that are doing great, that's the pattern I'm seeing. It's literally 11:30 at night. They're answering all the questions. I'll be at the store 9 o'clock tomorrow. Do you want to come in? But then once again, worst case, if nobody's available, it's going to be like your typical 24/7 chat provider. It'll come in as a form submission. Great question.
Yeah, we've got a few from Bill Vaughn. We'll start with this one. So he says, you handle things the same way they do, and the engagement level is higher than any form you can imagine. Let's see. Your people's KPI should be simple. Did you just answer the customer's question?
Yeah, I agree. Our coaching on this is as simple as it can be. Answer question, ask for appointment. I mean, it's that simple. Uh, it really is, and I agree with them. And the engagement's phenomenal. One of the other key things I always try to teach my peers in the industry is there's really only one question you need to ask yourself before making any change like this with what you're doing, and that's this: does this make us more consumer facing? And I guarantee this approach, it's a simple answer. Yes, it makes us more consumer facing. We've just been too good, doggone lazy or set in our ways to be better and do these things real time and more efficiently.
Well, here's one from George Nenny who's watching on LinkedIn. And George, you asked earlier, where is everybody? I think they're on Facebook. But what is the math on 60% appointments divided by chat start or further down the funnel?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm not sure exactly what George is asking. But George lives close enough that he can come by and see me and I'll show him.
And this next one I'm not sure. It's a little bit of a criticism, I think. I'm not sure. So I don't even know if this is this person's name. But he or she did a chat to you, one of your stores, and it sounds like it was being handled by a managed service.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, we're not perfect at this. We're the biggest thing we're monitoring each month. I was going to lead this a bit later for our KPI. If you're going to manage and do this internally, is we call it the live chat answer percentage. They're all going to be answered, but what percentage of them are being answered by your sales team? So that's been our biggest obstacle. Is remember I talked about when you start, it takes around 8 to 9 months to get it complete. We didn't bring on all of our other websites until around March of this year. And so our follow-on stores, that's what we're in the process of doing right now, is getting them as good as the first 2 stores we did, which was about a year and a half ago.
So follow that up. If you just said that every chat gets answered. So that's obviously number one. A while back, Driven Data did a study, and they wanted to know how many leads were actually being answered. It was just north of 70%. So,
and when you say being answered by who?
Just getting answered. So how many leads were just sitting there in CRMs, not getting any response at all?
Yeah.
What was the number on that again?
It was about 3/4 of the leads were actually getting answered.
Okay. Yeah. It is eye-opening if you really sit down and get in the back end of your chat tool and look at every single inbound chat that's coming in. And there is a large amount of them that are basically like, hey, and then they just fall off the face of the map. Nothing else happens with them. Even when you answer, they just disappear and they come back a half an hour later. I don't know if you could ever be at a 100% rate. I think why this is part of what we're doing is a good solution is we have that hybrid of AI and the 24/7 BDC, the chat center, that's screening a lot of that for us and only hopefully sending over the hot live customers that make the most sense for us to talk to at that point in time. Might be good for you guys to have one of these chat providers on just to talk about some of that consumer behavior that we're not necessarily seeing if you're not in the back end.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, we've got something like that.
Got an email from Active Engage.
I love the team at Active Engage. Great people over there.
So here's one. Just want to make sure her question's out there, even though you've already answered it. So basically, how do you handle the after hours again? Thanks for the question, Lisa.
Well, I'm sure you could have your provider turn it off. Then you'd have, I mean, are you completely taking chat off the site when you're pretty much every solution I'm familiar with right now is handling them for you, even when you're closed. But if you're not, you really should be. It's a 24-hour market.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Do you get a lot of after-hour chat sessions?
We do. We do. And that's
Okay.
why it's been fun having some of our people are jumping in and answering those. Because for them, they're competing against nobody at that point because nobody's up at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, I've got one young guy in his mid 20s with a luxury that is killing it with this just because he does all after hours. And if you think of that demographic, you're very familiar with Mercedes, Jeff. And these are people that are working hard all day and they're hitting it in the evening and talk about valuing their time. They really value their time. And so he's killing it because he's the only guy available at 10, 11 o'clock at night to talk to.
Yeah, I remember those years of being 25 and getting all the leads, and because no one else wanted to do them. Yeah.
Oh, here's one from Bob at Facebook. Is there a preference between texting versus messaging? So, i.e., any Facebook controlled app? If so, why?
I need to sit down and take a look as to what it is, the breakdown. One of the things he brought up in there, Bob, I think it's funny, is WhatsApp. When I spoke in Europe, I was in Belgium and Holland. They gave me endless hell about Americans and texting and why we didn't have WhatsApp. And so, by the way, if you're not familiar, the SMS technology really is antiquated. In good old United States, we are way behind the power curve. WhatsApp is definitely a much more robust platform that all of automotive is using in Europe, Canada, whatever the case may be. But Bob, I'd have to sit down and really take a look at what the breakout is right now. I'm sure it's going to skew towards the chat just because that's where we're pointing them directly with the CTAs. But we do have a call versus chat button at the bottom of the site. And I'm going to say that the text or chat, the text is going to be less just because we're pointing the bulk of it to chat.
Yep. So on that note, Dan Sayer's asking, it's not this one, he's got a different one. Here it comes. So within a form, if you gave the shopper a choice of the channel the dealer reached out to them, you think that would convert well?
I think that's a great idea. And one of the biggest things we've been doing is we keep beta testing on the verbiage. And this is a tall task, by the way. But I mean, that's how we found out the thing with the get e-price and how to get their information. Just literally changing one sentence saying Honda requires us to get that info. I love our chat providers. I do think they can get, how do I tactfully say this? Comfortable and just leaving the same chat tree in place for every single provider they contract across the country in every chat versus really having a customized chat based on that specific call to action and what you're trying to sell. That is my longer term project. So when I said, hey, we had a 20% increase in conversion, and that's great. I really don't think it's that great. I think we can do a lot better because I believe based upon the verbiage in that chat, which was the critique I just got today, I don't disagree with you. I think there are so many avenues where we can reword things that we can get more people to respond, engage with us, and we can just have more direct connection with them.
Mm-hmm.
So how did the OEM respond to these call to action changes?
That is a great question, Alex, because it hasn't changed.
Well, that's Adam's question, not mine, but it's a good one for sure.
Adam, because here's what's going on, Adam, right? You get those OEM reports and they rank all the, for example, the Nissan dealers in the district, and all of a sudden you're dead last because you show 0 leads on your site. And so you're going to have to educate them as what you're doing. I will say that I had Honda, upper level Honda came in early this week, and that was the first thing. He checks our sites to see what is going on. These guys no longer generating any leads. And then once he saw what we were doing, they were greatly encouraged by that. But you're going to indirectly get penalized in your district reporting because they're measuring by the old KPI. It's going to be your choice. If you want to innovate, you want to get out there and pioneer, be a little bit more aggressive.
I ran into that situation many years ago. I was working with our Nissan dealership, and we sort of did. This is what you're doing is where I wanted to progress it to, but just never got to it because of some of those obstacles. But I had removed all the call to actions on the VDP, except for one. And at that point, that's whenever I was using the hook logic auto hook piece.
Yep.
And so we would basically what we were doing, we were just incentivizing people with a $25 gift card to come test drive the vehicle. They didn't have to fill out any information if they didn't want to. All they had to do was leave a phone number to send it to their text. If the availability, I went back and forth testing this out for the opportunity for them to just print it. So they would put like a first name, last name, so then would print on their incentive sheet. But basically removing all the call to actions and just incentivizing them to come into the dealership for a test drive. It removed all follow up. It removed, any type of additional workflows. And it's been quite a few years, but I do remember we were not quite as good as you're doing with your closing ratio, but we were knocking it dead. The reason why I wasn't able to progress with it was because all of a sudden the internet sales team received no leads. Mm-hmm. And the OEM was on us because our conversion, their perceived conversion had plummeted. But all of a sudden, I've got internet sales people in a BDC that really didn't have anything to do. And the internet sales manager, of course, was highly pissed because he was getting paid on the leads to sold.
Before we jump in on that,
the third-party leads like your Auto Trader, your Cars.com, which only really come in as forms, and the best ones are going away, the dealership forms. But this is another angle on this that really had my attention from the very beginning, because each one of us has dealt with this struggle for years. You do all this marketing, all this work to generate them to a dealership website, all this work to make the website experience, get them to submit a form. And then there's just entire classes on how to work forms. My favorite from like 10 years ago was the blackjack, where it was like 21 calls in 3 days. Oh, that was a beauty. But then you make these elaborate processes, and your people never want to do them, right? You're trying to hammer on them. You need to do this on day 1, day 3, and send an email and a text and a phone call and all that. When you can nip all of that in the bud in the first 5 minutes of the experience, if we would just answer their question right now, ask for the appointment right now, you eliminate all of that follow-up. And the other great reality of this is that younger people we're hiring that don't want to make outbound phone calls, that don't want to send these emails, are the people that have grown up texting, chatting. This is a natural match for what they're already used to doing. If I'm going to draw a perfect automotive website experience, everyone, we would be answering all of these questions real time at the virtual dealership. I mean, seriously, that would be the nirvana to communicate with these people the way they want to be communicated with at the time they want to be communicated with, to then move forward with the deal.
Yeah, you sound like Matthew Haken.
Got
it. So there's this other Alex out there. He's got a good question. So Alex Vetter,
Cars.com.
Alex. Yeah, that Alex. So what if Cars.com were to remove the forms? Yeah.
I got this question during my presentation at Digital Dealer. And Alex, I'm actually going to say something on your behalf, which I did at Digital Dealer. I showed appointment setting rates based on the third-party providers as well as dealership website form. I'm not here to offend anybody, but I shoot straight. So Cars.com form leads, we were setting appointments at 25 to 30%, but Car Gurus, we were only setting at 15%. Could it possibly be because dealers judge third-party providers by the amount of leads they generate, and maybe, just maybe, perhaps the quality of the leads being generated aren't as good as some of the other providers, and that's why you get more. So that, Alex, you're the right direction. You guys, a great platform. We're getting good quality leads. The question I was getting in my session was, why can't the third-party providers like Cars.com, Auto Trader do this? I'm not sure the mechanics of that. I mean, maybe Alex can answer, but I mean, if our people could live answer those chats being pushed in a similar manner where we're just getting the hot ones, I think it would definitely do even better.
It sounds
but
like
I'll take the deep linking. I'll take the deep linking.
It sounds like there's a Weiler Cars.com beta in your future.
There you go.
We're not too far from Chicago. I love Alex Vetter in the industry. I will speak on your behalf, brother. He is the most responsive person in automotive I've ever worked with. And it doesn't matter whether you're praising or critiquing, Alex Vetter listens, and that team over there is always trying to get better. So well done to you and your entire team, Alex.
Yeah.
I feel like we
can echo that.
Didn't we have that conversation? That we were talking about that last week. Was it last week or the week before?
Well, we did have Cars.com on, so.
Well, that's why. Yeah.
But that wasn't just butt kissing that time.
No, you're right.
Cars.com is the new proud sponsor of Dealer Retrack Friday.
Question for you. Are you toying around with video with the chat?
We're doing it outside of the chat platform. By the way, I see your comment, Dan, Sarah. I completely agree on that. We need more third-party providers available. Video is still an important part of what we do. We were literally getting overwhelmed. We were doing a video with every single lead, and especially in the last year with restricted inventory and these high turns, we're getting cars listed in inventory that are still back in the service bay with people already asking questions. We're selling them before they even get out to the lot, and it's very hard to do a video that way. So what we're doing is we're trying to leave it more. We ask them, do they want a video, and respond in that case. And then we're using a separate platform outside of chat to get the video over to them.
Well, I was just wondering, because if you've got, whatever platform you're using to chat with the customer, I see a time when, be able to flip it right over to video through the chat piece. And, that way you're not recording the video and then sending it to them. It's just a quick live video. The other thing was around, the other thing was around trade-ins with chat. Are you doing anything different with those, or are you just sort of taking the same process? Any tips around that?
So in today's market, here's one of the pills that dealers are having to swallow to include ourselves. Everybody's always in a panic because the consumer is going to overvalue your car. You're going to put too much money into it, but then you want to see it in person to beat them down and move forward, correct? And the reality is that Carvana is taking them sight unseen. I'm not going to name the employee, but we had an employee here at Jeff Weiler that traded a vehicle into Carvana, a nice car. They showed up. He said, do you want to start it up? Do you want to test drive it? And the guy said, nope, I don't care. He says, in fact, if you would drive it up in the back of the truck, I'd greatly appreciate it. And off they went. Inspection complete. And in a way, I think it is so difficult to source inventory. Carvana is willing to take the losers with the winners. They do have an advantage over us because, remember, they can pay more for a car in your market than you can and take it somewhere else a few states away, and it's a profitable deal. But, right now it's just a matter of getting a number in front of them. We're taking a low pass, a high pass, trying to acquire the car and move forward.
Gotcha.
Well, as we've been at this for nearly an hour now, and I've got one really simple, easy question to tone this down and everyone can go. But so if websites blow, how would you make them better?
Well, like I said, really my answer is the more real time we can be. we need to be real time with the communication with the providers. I think most of the dealers out there last year, if they haven't been on board with digital retailing, are getting on board. That could be a whole nother session on how you're measuring the success of that tool. But I'm here to tell you, I think it is a highly effective tool in winning that battle to get them to choose you on the side based on that experience, their ability to pencil the deal, get their trade-in value, get their financing, those different elements wherever they're at in the experience. But to me, that's the next big steps. If you want me to go 10 years out and scare some people, you remember when you had economics in high
Go
school?
for it.
And they
When we
always
had
taught
what?
you economics 101 is growth
Oh,
through
yes.
volume and efficiency. And so you can see what happened to all the small drugstores and turn into Walmart and the box stores, as you were calling them, Alex, earlier. Will automotive shift that direction? Will it become more of a volume and commodity business with end-to-end digital retailing transactions? And the dealer that delivers the best experience, you don't care if you buy your Honda in Ohio or Texas, it's the same Honda. I'm going to take the best online experience and get it from there. I mean, we still have a lot of big changes in our future. My advice is simple. Be as consumer facing as possible, and you should win the game in your market.
It's great advice, Kevin.
So, well, shoot, that begs a different question. We maybe save this for a different show, but how can you teach dealers? And I asked this because I had to have this epiphany myself. I was born into a dealership, and I lived in it until I went to work in Vermont. And I was never a customer. I never knew how to think like a customer.
Yeah.
So, like, it's obviously if you give the customer what they want, they'll reward you. But if you don't know how to act like a customer or feel like a customer or know what a customer sees your business as, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've done consumer experience studies. We have assets, we have a studio, but I'm telling you, you can keep it simple. Get 10 $100 gift cards, grab 10 people, different ages, genders, races, whatever the case may be, put together a list of questions and just literally sit down and ask them and record it. And that's going to give you all the invaluable advice you need to be better at what you're doing. Very good, Joe. I see your comment. I agree. We talked about Amazon earlier on.
Good old Joe High.
Yeah, there's been some great old names coming up here today.
Kevin, you bring some people out of the woodworks.
Yeah.
Like Jonah Cole.
Yeah.
So
do you have this rolled out across all your websites now, or are you still testing it with a few, or what?
We have it across all our sites. We do not have it integrated within our digital retailing. So if you save in there, that's still going to come in as a form submission. The other question I haven't seen is we do keep one generic form, a contact us form, like on your About Us page, something like that. But we've replaced the bulk of these traditional form leads with the other side with chat. I mean, that's been a big difference. That also lessens the workload on your people, remember, which is a big pro if they hit them up immediately.
And are you working with several different chat providers, or have you been able to narrow it down to one?
Well, I'm working with one, and it's primarily come down to someone that was willing to partner with us and step outside of their comfort box of this is all we deliver for every single person across the country. So I would recommend you partner up with someone that wants to be innovative as you. But dealers, don't be selfish. A partnership is a two-way street. It's not take. It's give back as well and say, this is what we're seeing. Can you change this? Here's the complaints we have. Where to be better? Run an A/B testing on it, find out what's better, and then be proactive and switch. That's the type of partnership you want.
Perfect.
Great advice.
And
with that, happy Friday.
Yeah, Kevin, always a pleasure, man. Sure appreciate it.
You know, you guys were all, and this show is all that's between me and my Friday martini. So, you know, hey, I've got some future plans.
Well, have one for me, that's for sure.
Very good.
I got a few more
well,
hours.
I enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful for everybody that was on the show today.
Oh,
From
no
the
doubt.
comments, it seems that way.
Yep. All right, guys. Make it a great weekend.
Take care, everybody.
See ya.